Good evening, everyone. Thank you. We're here to call the meeting to order here of the Milton School Committee, August 19th. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brings us to item number 2, approval of the agenda. I don't know if there's any suggested changes. I am going to make one change, which is item 3, public comment. We're going to delay just until after a superintendent report on the residency. We expect a lot of public comment about residency. We want to provide context, similar to what we did with the budget, where we did a presentation on the budget. Before then we had public comment, so public comment will still occur, I guess, right after a presentation to provide a little context. But other than that, are there any other changes to this agenda we would like to make? Great. And with that, we will jump item 3 to item 4 and start with the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Superintendent Phelan, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Loring. We have a presentation tonight on the subject of residency to give the Milton community and the school committee an update. Would you just have that presentation pulled up to the screen, please? Wanted to just go over 3 or 4 things tonight to make sure that we have a common understanding of how we practice this work in Milton. Firstly, the agenda for tonight will provide the context for this presentation. We'll provide the Mass General Law that is rooted in our policy, the Milton Public School policy related to residency. We'll go over some data and process parts of this residency policy and talk about next steps. Next slide, please. Just so we start, and I know that I sent the letter home to the community for those families and also have provided that letter to the Milton Times in order to provide the community some background and context. First and foremost, I would like to say the Milton Public Schools does not discriminate nor target any group, students, families based on race, ethnicity, or any other demographic group. Just want to start with that. Also want to state that there are no current complaints locally with the school district or the school committee or at the state level, any related to residency policies and practices at this time. Nor has there been any complaints that have not been resolved and or worked through in my 10 months or 12 months here as the interim superintendent. Lastly, the district will respond to these concerns that the community has brought to our attention. The policy was voted on January of 2025, but there are pieces of that policy that have been brought to the attention by our community members that we will address tonight in order to make sure that folks know that we're listening to the community concerns. And I'd actually like to start with that because I want to make sure that that gets represented at the beginning of this presentation, and I'll also revisit it at the end of the presentation. The next slide. After reviewing the policy through the lens of the recent feedback and also with feedback provided by community members to me via email and other ways, first and foremost, we will review our data collection and make any needed adjustments in order to provide insight into any future shifts in our practices. We will also report out on residency at school committee meetings twice a year, once in the late fall and once at the end of the year. We will also stop using the anonymous tip line, which really has not generated much activity over time, and take that out of existence in the Milton Public Schools. And we will also have a meeting this week with other town officials to discuss the protocols for our school resource officers who conduct our investigations as part of our residency team for a stipend that we pay them to do so after their school resource job is over. I feel like these recommendations to the school committee as they need to consider to put these into the new policy or adjust the policy encapsulate what has been brought to our attention over the last few weeks during this time. So just for setting the context further, the next slide just shows you that this work is done in response to Mass General Law 76, Section 5. This has been on the books for a very long time. It's also been updated about, I think, in 2025, so this is the updated version. And this essentially says that attending the public schools of any city or town you must be a full-time resident of that city or town. Goes on to give some guidance, but it is a general law that every school district then has to create a policy around about how they will enforce that law within the Milton Public Schools or any school district. So this is where it starts. This law has been on the books for a very long time. The Milton Public Schools has created a policy related to residency, has updated it over time, as recently as January of 2025, about 5 months before I arrived. And it's actually a very extensive document. I hope everybody went on it. I included the links in the documents that I sent out to families, because it walks everybody through very explicitly what the expectations are to register for school if you have a child and you live in the town. What will happen if we need to review your residency, which we do every 3 years, which is in 3rd grade, 6th grade, and in 9th grade. And what will happen and how we will make sure and ensure residency is in place if in fact there is a conflict. Would actually like to open that link, Mark, if you don't mind, and just wanna show people the depth of the work that the school committee did with the prior administration in order to develop a policy that is very clear. Now, if there are aspects of this policy that folks don't agree with, I think some of them are the ones that I just recommended that we might wanna shift, which is totally okay, we can talk about that. But this is only a year and a half old. So letting you know as we walk through this policy that the best thing we can do is make sure that we're providing clear direction to our families who wanna register for school, which we do. We have a variety of ways that you can demonstrate residency because people's families look different. They have different living situations, and we wanna be respectful of that. And we wanna create a vehicle for them to register for school when they do have different living situations. For example, if you own a home and you are a couple that has a child and your residency is pretty solid in that home, that's one pathway that we walk you through. If you rent, we have material that we ask you for to demonstrate that. And some people actually live in situations where they may live with another family, they may live with a parent, and they and their child live with their parent and their child may go to school. All of those different family types and living situations needed a vehicle in order for people to put that paperwork together and register for school. So over time, those things have been developed to represent our families and what they look like, so we can effectively let them register for school and provide the appropriate documents. This policy also demonstrates that we will actually every 3 years ask folks to redo that, because we wanted an equitable way of asking everybody for the same documents in order to reestablish residency. We didn't want to just rely on word of mouth or the anonymous tip line to find out who still lives in town and who doesn't. So this every 3-year re-registration process for every single family in grades 3, 6, and 9 is a great way for us to make sure that we're doing that in a balanced and thoughtful way for every single family in the school district. After that happens, there are times when residency documents don't match. There are times when we need to bring families in, and I'll walk through that in some of the slides that we have further down. In my tenure here, we have followed this policy to the extent that it's written, and we have, again, have had no challenges with implementing this policy and no concerns from families that I'm aware of in my last 13 months of the job. So we can come out of this, thank you, Mark, and go to the next slide. In terms of what does it look like, why would I have someone have an investigation of my residency? I wanna go through those 6 areas that are usually the topics that come up that we would have to ask you to come up and explain your residency differently. First of all, when we ask you to reestablish, you might not be able to get a certain paper signed, you might not have an updated lease, you may have moved or your family situation is different, but that reestablish moment every 3 years usually comes up with conflicts because people have transient family situations, they may move in and out of town, they may be living with family for a few years and then maybe back to their own home. There's a variety of circumstances that we look at, that we consider, but we do ask people to demonstrate that so we can ensure that their residency is in line with what the legal law is, what the policy is. There are times where students just self-identify. I can't stay after school today because I need a ride because I live in town X. And then someone takes that information and provides it and we explore it. There are times when families may be hired with picking up or students are tardy or after school. And again, school personnel say, well, that this is something that's a concern. I'm not even sure if this child lives in town because they may not be able to be picked up on time. We have community members who report residency issues to us, and we'll be asking for those reports to be done either via email or phone call with their name from this point forward, if the policy changes. And also while registering a student, Milton Public Schools may have another student using the same address. So if I say I'm starting my kindergarten child at 123 Gulliver Street, but we know another family lives there because we have a student there, we would ask them to demonstrate what your situation is, that you may be the second family in that home. And there might be a reason for them to be that second family. And we would walk them through how they could register if that was the case. Lastly, there is a constant review of what apartments are for rent, what houses are for sale, and that information is also part of our process to determine whether or not there may be someone not living in the school, or maybe their residency may be in need of being checked at some point in time if their apartment is for rent or if their house was sold. We would actually explore that as well. I'm gonna go into detail with that process in another slide. But I wanna let folks know that during the year that just passed, 25-26, there were 15 students, not 15 families, because there were a couple of families with multiple students that were unenrolled in the Milton Public Schools and supported in their transfer to the school which they should attend given their residence. In 2024-25, there were 14 students, and in 23-24, there were 20 students. These numbers do not include those families who pre-register that may not have a Milton address. There's confusion out there in the public with families who think that they might be able to attend for certain reasons. We direct them to the policy, we direct them to what the expectations are. And there are times where they realize that their residency is not accurate or doesn't meet the standard. So that does not include that number of folks that may say, oh, that I didn't know that that was the rule. And also folks, when the reestablishment process starts, that may have moved out of town that just don't come back and register in school where they now live. They may have finished the school year in Milton, but they have moved to Quincy or Norwood or another town, and they finished the year with us and they are registering in their school. So there's a lot of different ways that this can be brought to our attention, and there's a lot of ways that we respond to that. And I'm gonna go into how we respond to that on the next slide. So we're gonna talk a little bit about process and communication. When there is a concern with a residency case, we take the following steps before we actually initiate any kind of formal investigation. First of all, we call the family. Is your living situation different? Is there something you need to let us know? Because we understand that your address may have changed. They either have a conversation on the phone, or they come up and see us, or they let us know what has changed in their life that allows them to not be able to give the information, or that they may live in the town, but they just need to explain. We actually call them to come in if they need to, because sometimes it's a personal family situation that's hard to talk about over the phone and hard to put in email. So we're respectfully always available to meet with those folks. If we still are confused or we need information, we reach out to landlords, we reach out to town hall, and we go through the registry of deeds to see if the house was sold, or if the apartment was sold, or if there's a conflict that we can secure an answer to with that instead of bothering the family further. We also discuss any changes in living or family circumstances and offer to meet in person as needed. We did that a lot this year. We met with people. We asked them if their family situation has changed. In not wanting to get into their family business, some folks would relay a situation around. It could be divorce, it could be they had to move out of their own home for a variety of reasons and move in with a parent. We listen to all of that. We find out which situations fit into our residency standard and policy and expectation, and those children remain in school. And if it further continues to be a challenge, we will let them know if it doesn't fit. And we ask for those documentations. Sometimes it's as simple as folks cannot provide documentation because they just moved into a house and they don't have a bill for cable or for gas because they haven't lived in the house yet, but they want to be able to go to school because they bought the house and they're moving in. It could be that the landlord's not available to sign the affidavit or to sign their new lease. And they want to be able to let us know that that signature will be coming. And they might say, why don't you come by, I'm right here, you can go through and meet me at the house and I'll let you know. And when that document comes to me, I will forward it to you. Those are all things that we do before we even get into an investigation, which settles a lot of the situations that we have. Step two would be if there is a determination that a living situation does not meet the standard of residency, we would also call the family or the parent and ask for a meeting in person. It's always best to meet in person in these circumstances. We'd explain the policy to the families again and give families a chance to discuss anything that provides any different additional information that actually could give us an understanding of how their life may have changed, and they still have a right to attend school. Any decision to remove a student is made with the ability for that family to appeal, which is part of the law. And when it is determined that a student does not reside in town, the district provides time and support to transition that student to the school system where they live, i.e. with student records, calling the school, and providing enough time, 1 week or 2 weeks, and sometimes we do it around vacation weeks of school, in order to make the student adjustment period work to their favor as best we can. So my goal tonight was to let folks know a little bit about our process, a little bit how we work this in Milton, that we are following the current policy. The policy is not very different than it was over time, except for the fact that it's very explicit. If you open up the policy on your phone or on your tablet, or if you're at home, you will see that everything that we just talked about is actually embedded there in the policy. With that said, if anybody feels like the school committee should address that policy and change things there, that's a conversation that should happen at this table or in policy subcommittee. My recommendation is, as your superintendent, that we should review the collection of the data that we have from this process. It has been collected this year. We just didn't put it in the same format that it was last year under the former superintendent. We know that that data will provide us some insights as to whether we're targeting or not targeting any one population, and ask them questions about why that is and how that could work differently. We will report out, if we want to put this also into the policy, on residency cases 2 times per year, again, late fall and at the end of the year. We will, and I do recommend, stop using the anonymous tip. I think everybody should have to put their name on any kind of a tip like that to the school district if they want it to be acted on. And we will also meet with town officials this week to talk about protocols for our school resource officers who work the residency as a part-time stipend to do home visits and investigations. And if through that conversation it yields that folks feel like we should take a different avenue and not have our school resource officers do that, then we will have that discussion at the school committee table to discuss it, and we would have to hire someone else to do that work. So the goal of this presentation is to let you know that we are listening to your concerns. We are here not because any kind of an event happened recently, that there's no current complaints in the Milton Public Schools related to this work, and that our goal is to make sure that our community knows that we're listening to them, that this is your community, we all live here, I live here. I want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that's comfortable and thoughtful, but also by the law and through the policies that we have. And make sure it's done in a way that's respectful to all the community members that we have. Lastly, I apologize, one last slide. For folks who want to find out more about re-registering that we do every year for grades 3, 6, and 9. Again, as an offer to be more accommodating to our families, we used to do this work over the summertime. If you multiply 325 students per grade, that's over 1,000 people that we would have to process all their paperwork. We'd have to ask you to, over the summer, provide a brand new copy of your lease or a brand new copy of your deed or a copy of your gas bill. We are going to, and we talked about this in the spring, use a Thomas Reuter's Clear database software, which we already use to look at residency cases. And we will present all that data electronically through the platform, so no one has to go do that on their own. No one has to get a new signature from a landlord. No one has to go dig out their deed to their home. And if there are any conflicts in that batch entry, we'll then take those one by one. So there's no need for anybody to act on that. The other reason why we felt that it was good to move it to the fall was that process always came up against starting school. It created a lot of anxiety for our families. Did you read that yet? I submitted that yesterday. I didn't realize I had to submit that. It's 2 nights before school. Can my child start? That all raises anxiety for our families and our students. So we actually pulled the hot air out of that balloon, and we'll do it in the fall. everybody comes back this year in September. We'll conduct this work in the fall. We'll report out on it at the end of the fall season. And we'll be interacting with our families throughout the fall in grades 3, 6, and 9 as well. So for folks looking for that annual email that you have to re-register, that's gonna come in a few weeks after we get school up and running. And we will do that electronically. And if anybody has conflicts with some of the data, we'll be reaching out to them individually through that process.
Thank you, Superintendent Thalen. I'm sure committee members have questions. We're gonna hold those questions for right now, though, to go back to item number 3 on the agenda, public comment. Nathan, can you hand me the public comment? So, related to public comment, thank you. In accordance with school committee policy, we welcome members of the community to share their perspective with us during public comment. We have set aside up to 15 minutes for this part of the meeting, and individuals may speak for up to 3 minutes each. While the school committee does not respond directly to public comment, there may be opportunities for members to address issues that are raised over the course of the meeting when relevant topics are on the agenda. We strive to engage in respectful discourse during our meetings and ask that public comment speakers keep that in mind. Speakers should introduce themselves and provide their address for the record. We have 3 names on this in-person sign-up list. We also have some members online. If you are online and looking to participate in public comment, if you could please raise your hand. We have 1 hand raised already. We're gonna go through the folks on this list and the hands raised. If after we get through this list, we'll kind of do a back and forth here to have both in-person and remote access. After we get through the 3 signups, if you're interested in public comment, you'd like to raise your hand, and we still have time, I'll try and call you and invite you to the table and speak. All right, so we will start first with Adina.
Good evening. My name is Adina Schechter. I am a resident at 28 Allen Circle, and I have a student at Pierce, a child at Pierce, and a child at Milton High School. I also, as I've said before, I spent 4 years employed by this district. And in that time, under 3 different DEIB directors, we tried to address this residency policy and the concerns we had about it potentially holding implicit bias. When I was last here, Dr. Shavers did mention this publicly in a school committee meeting and raised it. But afterwards, there was a lot of backlash. She was shut down and she was told to apologize for implying that there might be any equity kind of racist issues around the policy. And so I think that, a lot of us, I'll speak on behalf of myself, but, a lot of residents, I think we were really, when we saw the Globe articles that came out, I think it was the first time that publicly this was talked about, at least not for families who've experienced it themselves, but just as a community as a whole. And I just there are a few things I want to respond to. One is Superintendent Thalen, in the email that you sent the community suggesting that, talking about the disproportionality and how it wasn't really about racial profiling. And I want to say that when a policy consistently and predictably falls harder on one group of people, it is their doors that get knocked on, their housing arrangements that get questioned, their children whose enrollment gets threatened. That is racial profiling, regardless of whether any individual or administrator intends it to be. There are 3 specific changes to the policy that I think would make it more equitable, and I just wish that the DEIB folks I've worked with over the years could have been heard, because we could have really done something years ago on this. Long before my time at Milton Public Schools. I think other districts are expanding their acceptable document list to include employment letters, clergy affidavits, or government correspondence. I like that already you're considering that aspect of it, so I think that's good. I'm glad that there's no more anonymous tip line, but I am still very concerned that people can, even if they have their name attached to it, what evidence do they have? And I think that it should raise questions when someone could sort of tell on someone else in this way. It should raise questions about how implicit bias comes up. And lastly, I was surprised that one of the things that you didn't say is is how we really should change the idea of a school resource officer going to people's houses. I mean, immediately families who've ever had a bad interaction with the police, even if they're in plain clothes or whatever, it's going to feel like a really threatening experience to them. And I think considering the number of times we have to do this per year, I don't think we need that person to do it necessarily. These are not radical requests. I think a lot of districts are doing them. And I just think that if we want to have a genuine effort to rebuild trust with Black and brown families in Milton who have learned over time that even mentioning this comes at a cost, I think that's what will separate us from being a district that is not performing equity but actually practicing it.
We'll go online now. I see a hand raised, Meg Matthews. If anybody else online would like to speak, please make sure you're using the raise hand function. Meg, whenever you're ready.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Well, first of all, I just want to thank.
I'm sorry, real quick, Meg, can you just introduce your name and state your name and address for the record? And then
Sure, thanks. Meg Matthews, 59 Sugar Street.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for putting this on the agenda tonight and giving it the attention it deserves. I think this is a very kind of complicated issue with no easy solutions. But the Globe article certainly shined a spotlight on our residency practices and the disproportionalities in racial groups being investigated and expelled from the district, which definitely raises red flags. And many in the community are understandably concerned. I think you've heard from a number of them. I think I was happy to hear, like Adina said, that there's no more anonymous tip line. But again, the fact that we have a tip line, I think, warrants some further kind of reflection and investigation as we think about impact and who just kind of the impact on community, a sense of community and trust in neighbors, and again, like kind of what evidence is there to report on a neighbor. I was happy to hear and glad to hear that the data on race and residency investigations and expulsions is being collected and will be forthcoming. I think this is a way for the district to hold itself accountable and to monitor the equitable implementation of policies with data to kind of monitor and evaluate and understand any disproportionalities that we're seeing. I'm glad to know that there's conversation happening between the police and folks in the district upcoming about the use of school resource officers, police officers in these investigations, going into homes, going into children's bedrooms. I think understanding why some cases get escalated to this and others don't.
You have 1 minute left.
Have concerns about the impact of this. I'd also kind of just like to flag and hope that the school committee is considering the impact that these policies have on immigrant families, particularly in our current climate, and how this may play out. So thank you again for your attention in elevating this important issue. I know we're a district that cares about families, that wants to be inclusive and supportive. I have concerns that this policy isn't aligned with that, but hope to work in partnership with a spirit of collaboration to better align the practices with our values. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go back in person. Again, I'll just remind folks online, if you'd like to participate in public comment, please use the raise your hand function. But our next in-person sign up is Nora Harrington.
Thank you. I'm Nora Harrington. I reside at 5 Columbine Road in Milton. I have a daughter in the high school and a son in high school out of district. I actually didn't prepare comments coming here, but I am really moved by this issue. And I appreciate Superintendent Phelan, you saying that if the community feels that it's something that should be reviewed, that we review it. I know I signed a letter to the school committee and to you, I think it was signed by about 150 people. So there is considerable concern in the community about this. I agree with everything with Meg and Adina said, so I just want to focus, I guess, on two things. I hope that we can create a policy that has more compassion for people. I think for any person of any race, having a police officer come to your house, maybe with a sidearm, with them, walk into your home, walk into your bedrooms would be extremely concerning and destabilizing. And then when we think about how Black and brown people have been treated in the United States, I'm not saying necessarily in Milton, but we have a long history in the United States of disproportionate negative impacts to Black and brown people by the police. So it feels somewhat cruel, really, to send the police into people's homes and into people's bedrooms. And I appreciate Meg's point that you just made about how this would feel immigrants to Milton feel. I think we could do much better, and I appreciate that you all are thinking about this. And I'm glad that you put the numbers up there for how many expulsions, or whatever you call it, de-districting have happened in the last few years. And I noticed that the last 2 years the number was 14 and 15. So, if we're talking from preschool through 12th grade, maybe one student in each class per year. That is not a huge number of people. And we've all heard a lot of rhetoric, I think, in Milton over the last few years. Oh, this is rampant and it's happening so much, and it's, we have to have bigger classrooms because of this, et cetera. And we have a very robust policy. So, thank you. So I would ask that Milton take a look at this, from the perspective of certainly fiscal responsibility, but also compassion, and maybe we can all bring down the tone and the rhetoric here about whether or not this issue is a crisis in Milton and for the financial impact in our schools. So thank you very much.
Looking back online, I currently don't see any raised hands. So given that, I'll come back to our next in-person. Again, if you're online and would like to participate, please use the raise hand function. We will go next to Jesse. You should state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Of course. Jesse Grove, I live at 42 Lincoln Street. I have a daughter who just completed her first year in Milton Public Schools, finished kindergarten at Glover. I thank you for your time and attention in this matter. And I want to echo the point about appreciating getting rid of the anonymous tip line, but also emphasize there's no reason why you need to be taking neighbor reports about this issue. It's not their job to report these issues, and it's a waste of your time to field those reports. So I do not think that we need any sort of neighbor reports on this issue. And I don't see the point of that. I appreciate the idea of reviewing, and I would be interested to know who the other towns you're meeting with and when the meeting is scheduled for. But I do have concerns about the framing of this issue. I have concerns that the presentation started by a statement that racism is not the problem here. That tells me that there's an inclination not to look at race as the issue here. That's also echoed in certain public statements that have been made about rejecting the idea that race is the only possible explanation here. Of course, it's not the only possible explanation here. Like you said, there's not a case being made against Milton Public Schools right now, but the data reflects that people of certain race are being unequally impacted here. And so if you're not looking at race as a potential problem here, then you're missing the point. I don't like that it started with a proclamation that that no one's being racist. That's not the problem. The problem is people of certain race are being impacted. I also have a concern that nothing was mentioned about the police. And that is a chief concern, I think, of everyone that signed that petition, including myself, and a lot of people in this town. Why are police officers being used towards this task? Police are expensive and follow their own protocols, not school protocols. Also, Milton Police don't use body cams. They are following their own protocols. And I do not understand why they're being employed in this way. And the fact that they weren't mentioned is troubling, frankly. I also have a concern about about data collection. I am happy to hear that the data has been collected and will be released at a certain point. But even here, we see this data, the data presented as the amount of kids unenrolled, when what matters is the amount of kids who are investigated and the race of the kids who are investigated. And I would like to know those numbers as well. Thank you.
Okay, going back to looking online, there are no hands raised online for public comments. If you would like to participate in public comment and you're online, please use the raise hand function. Anybody else in person, please?
I'm Tara Boughton. I live at 160 Audubon. I'm a Tucker parent. I thought that my son Otis was gonna speak tonight, so he's decided not to, but that's why you hear all the noise outside, so I apologize for that. Thank you all for considering this issue and for putting it on the agenda. I think there have been some very eloquent comments thus far about the concerns raised in the Globe articles and by the community over years regarding these issues. I think I would just echo that I was concerned about Superintendent Phelan's August 14th email stating that residency policy aimed to be fair, transparent, and equitable for every family. I think that this framing just kind of really overlooks a fundamental problem, and that is that the policy is not equally accessible to all families. So, speaking from my own experience, I will say that our family benefits from structural advantages. We own our own home. English is our preferred language. Meeting those residency requirements for the Milton Public Schools is a very different experience for our family than it is for many of our neighbors. And I think to frame it that this is an equitable policy just because you're requiring similar documents from families is completely ignoring the social framework in which we live. So I would also say that I've talked to my 7-year-old who's going to be a second grader at Tucker next week, I guess. And about what he would feel like if the police were to come into his room to check out his room. And he said, and I thought he was going to share with you tonight, but he said, that would be really scary. And then he said, maybe I would feel okay with it if I knew why they were there. But I think that is also reflective of our family's privilege, that he is not a child that I have had to coach as he's growing older about interactions with the police because of his privilege of his skin color. And so he has a very different experience and different framework in understanding that interaction potentially with police than some of our neighborhood children do. And so I just think that it's important also that, as the numbers show, this is not very many children. And I wonder how much the cost of paying for the Milton Police would go towards supporting those children through our Milton Public Schools. I would say that it is not the job of our public school district to frighten children, but it is the job of our school district to support those children for whom these residency requirements are complicated.
We still have a little bit of time left in our 15 minutes for public comment. I still see no hands raised online. Come back in person. If there's anybody else in person who'd like to participate, please raise your hand. Last call for online and in-person participation. And we will close public comment. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. And we will move back to item 4, Superintendent's Report, and move into a committee discussion of the presentation from the interim superintendent. Follow questions, comments from committee members. And if you're online, if you can just raise your hand so I can spot you. I think Stevie, I saw you come off mute, so if you wanna go, you're welcome to.
Very observant of you. Um, Thanks, Mark, and thank you, Superintendent Phelan, for the presentation. And forgive me if I am a little loosey-goosey again. It's 2 a.m. where I am, so.
So much for being here, Stevie.
Yeah, of course. So first, I wanted to ask a question, and then I wanted to share some thoughts. My question is, did I hear correctly that there is demographic data for the 25-26 school year?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. So just to share my thoughts, for me, the two things that this comes down to is data collection, data, cleanliness, I guess I would call it, and the home visits by law enforcement. So, I appreciate this policy was, changed in January of 25. I'm not actually clear on whether the language about home visits and police involvement in those is new to that time, or if that seems to have existed for a while before then. And I understand that Milton is not unique in using law enforcement. I did, a little bit of research, and I've seen, Westboro, North Andover, Canton, Randolph, Cohasset, Brookline, North Reading, Newton. These are districts that in their residency policies also use law enforcement, or retain the right to use law enforcement to do these investigations. But and this is, only a few out of over 300 districts, so I, don't know across, and there's no searchable database for every district's policy. But this is just a sampling of districts that are a little comparable to ours. And what I have found, though, is that most of our peers only require documentation, not investigation. Canton is probably our closest peer in terms of demographic makeup, and they don't use their town's PD. They retain the right to use like a private investigator or something. But Weymouth and Dedham don't have home visits and police investigation in their policies at all. And so I guess my point here is to say that just because it's not unusual or we're not outliers, I don't think that means that we should not consider whether or not there's a different way to do this, and that we're not, that pulling this out isn't something that we should consider. I think we should, for all the reasons that have been stated by other folks, prior to my speaking. So just putting my opinion or my thoughts about that out there. In addition, the data collection part of this is one of the things that I think is most important. I know that we have said that there will be some categories added, or there's demographic data that will be collected, that was collected this year and will continue to be collected. For me, when you collect data, the purpose of collecting data is to answer a question, and so I would hope that efforts to sanitize our data and to be more diligent about the data we collect would start with the questions of why we're collecting the data, what questions we're trying to answer. Those questions might be, are Black and brown families being disproportionately affected by the residency policy? It might be, are we even benefiting from these residency policies, right? Like someone mentioned, how much are we paying for school resource officers to do these investigations? How many people are being found to not actually be residents of Milton and being removed? How many are false positives and are coming back into the district? What is the racial and demographic breakdown for the people that are being affected by this? Those are some of the questions that we might want to ask, and to ask those questions, or to answer those questions rather, you have to be collecting the right data. So it starts with knowing what the questions are and then formulating the data in such a way that you can answer those questions and also make sure that the tool is usable by the people who have to fill these things out in a clear and repeatable manner, a manner that can be filtered and searched, right? That there's a data validation, that you can't put one thing into a column that doesn't belong there or that doesn't, address the purpose of the column, things like that. And so I hope that any, future work, and this is all future work, right? Like what has happened in the past or the lack of data or whatever that we've collected in the past, we can't go back, can't put that in there. It's not there, right? But going forward, I hope that any discussion about changing the data and the way that we collect data is rooted in these sort of basic data practices of defining the questions that are going to be asked and then coming up with the types of data that we need to collect to answer those questions and making a tool that is easy to use and easy to parse so that, we can track what's happening. Because I'll agree, looking at the raw numbers that the Globe reported and some of the things that I have been able to review myself, there's not enough consistency to say yes for sure, but it definitely is a red flag that deserves to be looked into more closely. Like even the 1 or 2 years of data that I was able to see raised, just it seemed unusual, and I understand why folks would be concerned about that, because looking at those numbers, it is concerning. And I would be very interested in knowing about some of the data. The numbers that you shared, Superintendent Phelan, showed how many kids were removed. But I also know that there are some percentage of families or kids who come back because they were actually residents and they did manage to eventually provide, so that's another piece of data that I would like to know, like when we go through all this, like how many of those kids actually were Milton residents and had to be let back in, and what's the demographic breakdown there, and how does that compare to the demographic breakdown of who was investigated in the first place and then who was ultimately found to be outside of the district's policies. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Stevie. I want to jump to one of the things you asked just around the policy change in 2025, January 2025. The only thing related to the policy, primary thing related to the policy that changed in 2025 for publics was the addition of third grade as an investigation. The rest of the policy goes back, I think, around 15 years. So it's been the practice. These other pieces that I think that are brought up as a concern based upon the article and some of the data are practices that long predate Superintendent Phelan especially, and so want to highlight that as well. But other questions from members or comments?
Mark, about that, the revision, I think that one other thing we may have done with the revision was just include some additional language or the procedure within the policy. So while it wasn't changed to the procedure, we were attempting to be more clear for families in the community to understand what was being done through the process, even if it was not a change.
Yes. Let's remove ambiguity.
And then once John started, we did implement including CLEAR database to it as just proactively, right? I think that the residency registration department recommended that we incorporate that as an additional tool. So I think some of and John, I'm sure you can add more context to it, but I think it's helpful in terms of providing additional information that's in a database so that, I think it was mentioned, using tip lines or neighbors reporting. So if you have this database that kind of, covers all aspects, I think it really just helps streamline that process for families. So I think it's just an added, so I appreciate that we've over the last couple of months, like we have been proactive to make it better. So like over the, since January, we've tried to, clarify, adding more clarity to the language and just improving our process overall. So it's something that we're continuously refining. So I do also wanna add, as a brown immigrant, that I know there's a lot of kind of confusion around police, and I've lived in this town for 19 years, and I would like to say I'm just very grateful for the Milton Police Department, and I want to just provide some context around the school resource officers. They're in our buildings with our kids every day. They form relationships with our kids. They run the DARE program that my girls attended for 3 years. Tonight they had a police night out. They do it every August for families. It's very well attended, where it really is about building community and building a better relationship with our Milton Police. So I hope I know there's a lot of like fears around police, but I wanna share from my own experience and from the experience that I've had in this community, living here as a brown person, that the Milton Police Department tries really hard to make sure that they have a strong connection with community members. I've seen it in the schools. They build relationships with those kids. If you go to the football games on a Friday night, they're there, they're talking to the kids. They know those kids, and it's important. It's not someone like coming in unknown. So I just want to provide that there is some clarity around that, because I think that's really helpful. They try very hard to build relationships with our kids, and it's important to have those familiar faces, especially in times where they feel unsafe.
Questions?
Just one thing, or a couple of things maybe. Thank you, Superintendent Phelan, for the presentation and for taking this situation seriously. And thank you to everyone who came to speak at public comment. Appreciate the public's input and ideas. I agree with Stevie, or one of Stevie's points, around the use of data here. I think not having good information is like makes understanding and then responding to this question very challenging. So I'm really glad that there's a couple of pieces on here. Can you, I'm just out of curiosity, so like the second bullet here is we'll report out on residency cases at school committee meetings 2 times per year. You probably haven't figured out exactly what that might look like, but I'm curious if you have an idea as to what that might look like what kind of information might we review in a school committee meeting? And I guess, sorry, John, just I guess underneath that is, I'm not clear yet just on like what information is actually available. And might this clear system and I think this is the point you're making, correct me if I'm wrong, that having this database might actually strengthen our data management practices. But I don't know if that's actually what that system does.
So the CLEAR database system has been used in the Milton Public Schools for a period of time to review residency issues through the technology in order to make sure that we're getting our addresses and our documents straight. The change that we were asking the school committee to consider and we are implementing this fall is that we can actually, instead of asking everybody to come out every 3 years with all this information, that we can just use the existing information and run it through the database in a batch entry way, which would allow us to view that information and see whatever conflicts arise, so we can actually work through the conflicts with families and not have to bother every family to get those things signed. Last year, for example, we had about 110 families, and I think this is a point that Ms. Harrington made, who were struggling to get certain documents from folks because they just didn't have access to it and they had a hard time getting a hold of their landlord, or they just didn't have the gas bill, or they paid it online and they were trying to figure it out, or they couldn't access the computer portal to submit it all. So we offered times for folks to come up and bring it in person. We brought back a former family liaison to reach out to the 100 families by phone in person to make sure that they had what they needed or supported finding it for them and with them, and actually made efforts to reach them and we had only 2 folks by the start of school that we had to work through as opposed to 100. So the CLAIR database just is one mechanism that prevents all that worry and that confusion and that we are trying this year for the first time. We might try this database in batch entry mode and decide that we don't like it because we actually want a more personal approach to this work. We might wanna be able to meet with people and have them be able to give things in person because it might be able to tell their story or give us the narrative of their background and what their needs are. So this will be a pilot year. To your question, if the school committee adopts wanting the presentations twice a year, my vision was if the batch entry process works, we could report out after that is done. This is what happened during the last 2 months where we were asking everybody to reestablish. This is how many meetings we had. This is how many folks had to be requests to come in and give additional information. Here's how many folks needed to do that. Here's how many folks who couldn't produce the documents. Maybe even here's how many folks who decided to not attend the schools because they may not live in the district and they decided to move out before they had to go through that process. We see a little bit of that. At the end of the year, we'd just give a summative evaluation or a summative set of data that says, here's the information we presented in December or January, and here's the other cases that we had by the end of the year. And the data that we are looking to collect, we have an idea of what we think would be a good idea to collect, and we can run it by if the school committee wants to put this into subcommittee, we would provide that process to them and go from there. Again, this is policy stuff that we're talking about, school committee policy stuff. So if those things want to be considered, then we meet in sub-policy and we go through them and we reevaluate and put them in place.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it would also just kind of like for us to look at the clear, like us using it this year and how it worked, what sort of things can be tweaked for next year and so on and so forth. So I really appreciate this presentation and the recommendations are certainly things for us to consider. Definitely in policy. And so thank you so much, John, for your continuous communication on this important topic throughout the summer months. And you've put a lot of thought into it. And having worked with you on policy this past year, I would also like to say the amount of care that you take in each of these residency cases where you invite the families in and meet with them and talk to them and figure out how to work things out. So there is that personal aspect. For a very small department, a lot gets done and it's done with a lot of care, which is something that I learned this past year. So I really appreciate the residency registration department, small but mighty, does a lot and they make sure that they take care of each family with care. So just want to give a big thank you to all of you and the work that you do. I know it's hard and it's very sensitive and you put a lot of care into it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Stevie?
Thank you. I just actually had a question about CLEAR. Can you explain a little bit more about how it works? So it's a database of documentation, like it goes online and looks for data regarding residents, or can you explain more about that?
So as the very least technically qualified person in the room, I will take my best effort. The database of addresses and documents that we have get uploaded to a portal through the software that is run through their CLEAR database where they have access to I assume people's addresses, people's tax information, people's other kind of bills that would be already something that they have access to, this public information. And it's my interpretation in a very loose, informal way to say they run through that database, and if the address matched up with what they see as maybe the address of a house if someone owned it, or a rental unit that had somebody in it of the same name, that would all come back as verified. And then there may be names that come back as unverified that we would then, from a human being standpoint, take those and begin the previous process that we have always done, which is contact people, ask them if there's anything that we're missing, can you bring something else in if that wasn't something that represented your address, and begin to have those personal questions. Basically what we do in process 1.0, which I have put in the slide, and then if need be going down to process 2.0. So it just allows us to kind of get as many things done using technology as we can. And then if there's any issues that arise, we would then go back to our personal approach of calling people, meeting with people, and making sure that we had that similar connectedness with our community members.
Okay, and so just to repeat back to you what I heard to make sure I'm clear, no pun intended, so this is a tool that allows, essentially takes some of the burden off of the administration doing that first pass of just checking addresses against known data. And then when there are discrepancies that are flagged, that triggers the remaining, or the sort of second step of that. So it is, and I don't mean this in any bad way, but it does, it works really well for folks who, for example, own their home or have like sort of standard, housing agreements or leases on file and things like that. Does it help with folks who have some of these extenuating circumstances, multi-generational, that sort of thing, the sort of thing that normally you would have to do extra data collection and go and talk to people about in any way, or no?
So to answer your first question, it helps the administrative piece of this work, but it also helps the families who don't have to go through something if they have all their paperwork together. How it identifies families, we have, 3 primary residence categories, for lack of a better term, and this is one of the data points that we would like to collect. We have folks who own their homes, we have folks who rent homes, and we have folks who live with other family members or other members who have a home in Milton that is not the home. So it would be like if I was living with my child with my mother. That is what we call a POC, where that's a different format. So we allow that, that's an appropriate residency process. We, over time, not while I was here, they actually made a vehicle for that, to have that just signed by the parent to verify that they live in that home and that their daughter or their son and their grandchild are living with them. That's where some of these might continue to be problematic, we'll find out. But I'm assuming that if I'm living in that home and I have, fortunate to have a job or have a car registered to the home and my insurance bill goes to that home, that those things will all be confirmed through the database check. So it may or may not provide additional burden on those, any one of those groups differently, but we'll find out when we go through the process for the first time. But that's one of the data points that we wanna collect. Not only reviewing or asking the question, how is this impacting people by race? How is this impacting people who rent versus people who own versus people who live with their family member or somebody else that's an unconventional living situation, that we actually have a policy that lets that all happen. But keeping an eye on that as well might lead us to answer the question, we need to do a better job with folks who don't have traditional living situations. And we have to figure that out. So that does, I get to your point, Stevie, there are different questions that we could get answers to over time when we look at the data, and that's gonna be one of the data points we pay attention to as well.
I wanna be a little mindful of time, but we can have another.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say I also definitely appreciate all of the feedback that we've been hearing from people this evening, from the email that we have received. I think it's obviously a complicated issue that has been challenging for a long time in Milton, as you can see from some of the cases that were cited within the Globe articles that go back many years. I think I sincerely appreciate the openness, from you, Superintendent Phelan, from your team and from this committee to really take a hard look at it, and to be ready to implement changes right away, as we also push forward some larger conversations at the policy subcommittee that will continue. So I think that's, given that we as school committee members have not received communications about particular concerning residency cases, I think the opportunity to take a step back and hear feedback about the general concerns, presents us with like not just an opportunity, but an imperative to really look at how we can improve. And I have experienced in this committee like a general openness, a genuine openness to like a growth mindset, for lack of a better term. I mean, to a like true desire to do our best for this community and representing this community, even and maybe especially when the issues are not super straightforward or like easy to fix. That makes it that much more important that we can persist to look at whether small changes that can add up in important ways and also to potentially significant adaptations. I think the new tool is like a good step forward. And I, just appreciate that we're on this path, a constructive path, even though it's obviously difficult. And appreciate people being engaged. So, thank you.
Great, just I think as a final note, I just wanna thank John. I think people don't know how much work John was doing to kind of respond and reflect on this over the summer on his vacation, just constantly. And again, not just about this, but about all the things that you as the superintendent kind of are doing and supporting across. And so I think the thing I've appreciated, John, about you in your last 12 months here is when things like this come up, I think there could be a natural bend towards like defensiveness rather than kind of, as you said, like growth mindset, opportunity for improvement. And I think each time you've like taken a pause and tried to hear feedback and say, okay, how can we change? I'm very appreciative of you coming forward and saying, here's some recommendations. What I hear from committee members is consensus around those recommendations is feeling good and like good changes to the policy. It seems to me from what I've read within the petition that's been shared with us and some comment here that there's alignment across community voices. I guess I would posit to the committee that the next step here would be to get an updated draft of the policy at the policy committee subcommittee, have them work through that, make those adjustments and then bring that back here so it can be reviewed and voted on and hopefully implemented, those changes. And again, any other ones if the policy subcommittee kind of looking at things decide something else would be helpful. I think again, none of us want students or families to feel targeted, much less be targeted based upon race, gender, religion, any of those things. We want to find the balance here within a residency policy where folks feel welcomed and supported and cared for within our community. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure we're following state law and only educating students who reside in the town of Milton. So we're trying to balance those two things and appreciate the feedback that we're getting about how we're maybe not doing that well enough. And again, appreciate your guidance on that. So if that sounds right to everybody else, I think that's where we'll push this. And we'll again the policy subcommittee to bring this, let us know, give us updates, and bring this back in a future meeting. Great. All right. With that, we will then we'll continue with item 4 of the superintendent's report. Up next was the approval of the 2026-2027 handbooks.
Correct. We have a memo from myself to from Charlene Roach to myself about her work around the handbooks this summer. We had already, as a school committee and administration, discussed wanting to vote the handbooks as they were with a general overview before school started. And we're gonna call that the vote of a 1.0 student handbook vote. And then we knew we had some work to do on the policy related to hate speech and bias in our protocols. That was a result of the work we were doing with that committee. That committee resumes at the end of August. Our goal was to have that work done between August, September, and October, and to have a policy come back to the school committee and to go into the handbooks at that time. that would be vote 2.0. So we wanna make sure parents are very clear that we know we're gonna vote the handbooks now with relatively the same information. And also knowing that there's other items other than the hate bias work that we're doing that will change the handbooks. Also some legislative issues that have arisen over the last several months that our legal counsel has advised. We put in policy, but policy will be a very busy group this year. They will need to be revised through policy before they're asked to be put in the handbook. So we have work to do in policy related to our bias and hate working group protocols that will go in sometime in the fall. And any other legislative changes to that have been passed through the state. We're gonna wanna look at the MASC language and any new policies that come up regarding those new legislation issues, and then look at that locally and get some language in subcommittee to be brought forward as well. So we will have another vote of the handbook, and I say that repeatedly, if you are a family that you're signing your handbook on the first day of school along with all the other things you're asked to submit, you will be asked to do your handbook one more time, probably in the late fall, that will have other items in it as well. So the handbooks that you're voting now look very similar to the ones that you had prior, I believe had voted last year, except for some names and phone numbers and change of staff. So there's no material change to the vote that you have tonight that would be any different from the vote from last year.
Yeah, and a couple changes based upon policies we changed last year, like
Correct.
the student athlete piece.
The homeschooling
Homeschooling,
was a
yeah.
change, yep,
Yeah.
and the student athlete handbook was changed as
Yeah.
well to reflect that change,
Yeah.
correct.
I wanna shout out Stevie for the great AI analysis of the comparing the two was, again, spot on, really appreciate that, but that, most of that from what I was reading through, nice documents into line with what you're saying, which is name changes and then things we discussed or changed within policy. But any questions that folks have about the handbooks, again, with the very big caveat that there is ongoing work within that anti-bias working group that we know is gonna inform these kind of and make changes during the school year. That just are not ready for the start of school, and we need to have something voted on by this committee before the start of school.
No, I appreciate the memo that was included in our folders, and also Stevie, thank you so much for providing that document that kind of just, you know, helped kind of outline everything for us and just easier to digest, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
We expect it every year, Steve.
Especially when you're on vacation.
That's right, Just for the sake of time, not to stop any discussion, but if there's no questions, then I will also encourage a motion.
Make a motion to approve the following handbooks for 2026-2027. Milton High School Student and Family Handbook, Pierce Middle School Student and Family Handbook, Elementary Student and Family Handbook, Milton Public Schools Staff Handbook, and the Student Athlete Handbook.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further questions or discussion? We will need to do a roll call vote, given we are hybrid, so we'll start with Bao.
Yes.
Stevie,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Nathan,
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you, Charlene, for putting this together. And we will move on. Well, anything else within the superintendent's report?
No, want to let the community know we are obviously just got through 3 great days with our new teachers. We'll provide a more detailed opening of school presentation when we get together in 2 weeks. Wanted to address this was the main driver of the original agenda. So we'll introduce our new cabinet members at the next meeting. We'll talk about our new staff and the hiring practices at our next meeting. We'll thank the custodians 100,000 times at our next meeting because they do all this hard work over the summer, as well as our technology folks and all our administrative assistants. And also Kala and Dr. Lyons for providing 3 great days with our new staff. And you should know that your full leadership team met in this room yesterday for about 6 hours on our priorities for next year, focusing on teaching and learning, focusing on rigor, focusing on using data to inform our instruction and making sure all of our students are working and achieving at grade level, talking about evaluation of teachers and the new rubric that we voted in our new contract, and a lot of good work being done by the leadership team in preparation for this year. We are expecting a second year of good communication, good support for our staff, and having them understand exactly what they need to do based on what they give us for feedback. With their, Carla has been doing an amazing job of listening to what they need for PD, providing that PD, listening to their concerns about certain aspects of teaching and learning that we provide them. And we can't wait to get back in the classrooms and do our learning walks again next year. So we'll give that big good news story when we meet in 2 weeks.
Very exciting. Great, I'm going to change the agenda up slightly just to be cognizant of our special guests, so we'll skip the chair's report and come back to it, and we'll move on to item number 6, the school building committee report. And we are happy here to welcome Sean O'Rourke, the chair of our school building committee, as well as our 2 architects who did the kind of space study for La Brea, and so we'll get an update here on La Brea and maybe some other school building SBA updates, but mostly on some of the La Brea project. There's been a lot of progress and work put in, so thank you all so much for being here. Share, are you on? Do I need
Yeah,
permission?
it should be in there. All good?
I think you can share, but.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Sean O'Rourke, town meeting member, precinct 8, chair of the school building committee, with me tonight.
I'm Jana Silsby from DLR Group. I'm a client leader for K-12 and an architect. Shanali Rajani with DLR Group, senior project manager.
Share. Send request.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
Requesting them.
It says the host is not allowing sharing for this webinar.
Why aren't we allowing sharing? Host.
Give it a second.
I'm gonna knock on the door, I'm sorry, I don't see how I.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah, essentially what we're here tonight is just give a quick update with MSBA and touch focus 100% on Library College and our progress. For the school building project right now, we're working on module 2. We're forming a project team, so as you're aware, we have PMA consultants as our owner's project manager. There was a site walk yesterday with the architects, and we're gonna be on the designer selection panel for MSBA come October. Once we form that team, we'll be moving into a feasibility study. And again, just for context, when we talk about MSBA, for MSBA right now, we have 3 enrollment options we're allowed to look at under the umbrella that we're operating under right now. One is an ad reno to Collycott Cunningham School, which is a standard for any school that you submit a statement of interest on. The other 2 options are new construction, which would be new elementary school, grades K to 5, for 495 students, and a new middle school, grades 7th and 8th, with 660 students. So currently, right now, MSBA only allows the town to consider sites that are under its control. So the Guile Road site is the only one the town actually controls right now. It's my understanding for Library College, a bid has been submitted on Library College, and we're waiting to see if we're successful with that. If we are successful with Library College, that would then be a second opportunity that we could look at. But at the same time, we didn't wanna wait when this opportunity arose, so we started our work, way back in April. And the reason I talk about MSBA is, as I mentioned, right now, if we are successful with Library, we have essentially 3 avenues we could look at right now. One is
continue with MSBA with the enrollment options that we had, or that I just mentioned. And we also have the pre-K options that you guys asked us to look at over the summer. That pre-K option has an opportunity to go back to MSBA, but it would incur a longer delay because we essentially restart our process where we're at right now. So just as a recap for the committee and more for the public, Labouré College is made up of 3 buildings. Building A, which is the mansion, Building B, which is essentially office space right now, and Building C, which is the majority of the classroom space. The typical classroom size is about 725 square feet. And you'll see how this plays in when we bring up the new floor plans for what we're looking at. There's no cafeteria as part of that building, there's no gymnasium, and there's minimal bathrooms. And one thing I've always mentioned is, we tried to minimize what we're doing for renovations, mainly the Building B and Building C, so we don't trigger the energy code in the mansion. What you see here is kind of a timeline of, how we got to where we are today. So we had an initial site visit in April. Shortly thereafter, school committee, you guys had taken this up, started looking at a rubric of options for enrollments or different programs that you can have there. Along that same parallel path, school building committee secured funding or used our remaining funding to hire architects here, so that when that educational program came down, we were ready to feed it to them and feed into this aggressive timeline. One of the key ones on here to note, our architects did meet as a visioning session with the superintendent and the early childhood education center, the early childhood director, to give basically some input on what we're doing here. And then from that input, they developed the floor plans that we're gonna see here and the cost estimate. So the first option, and I'll let you guys take it away because you guys do a better job at
Sure.
this for the options better than I do.
Sure. So the first option was basically, let's see how much we can fit just as the buildings exist today. You can see by the yellow, the white is the existing mass of the building, the yellow are additions. There are a couple of minor additions to address some existing handicap as well as egress code. With the pre-K and K, it's a change of use from a business use, which is a college use as a business use, to an education use. And we did not want to trigger a whole bunch of things with the mansion. So the yellow mass that is in the left-hand side of the screen is a new egress stair. What he outlined as Building B, which is currently mainly office use, it is can be useful for some classroom and other kinds of facilities, depending on the option. But in this option, we still wanted to have all of the egress go, not into the mansion and be able to happen independent, which means we need a new stair so that we don't dead end at that Building B. The other yellow mass, currently the entrance at that point into the Building C is up a set of stairs and into the middle floor of Building C. We wanted to make sure that that entrance as well was handicap accessible, as well as honestly gain just a little bit of extra square footage that could be used as program space. And what is beneath there that you can't see in this image, but there is already an existing room that would, used to hold an oil tank. So there's existing foundation. So the thought was build a new, square footage above it, have a handicap entrance, have a new terrace / handicap ramp to get you to that level from that sidewalk. And so that yellow is the new addition there. And then on the second floor, technically the third floor of that Building C, second floor from this view, you would actually then get a little bit of additional educational space. Very, very minor though. And what we found is, not surprisingly, looking at the square footage of the existing buildings, we were not going to meet what was requested of us, which was they wanted to have at least 7 classrooms total for the pre-K, and they wanted to have at least 18 classrooms total for the kindergarten. In this diagram that you see there, the lighter violet is regular pre-K classrooms. The regular pre-K classrooms can serve either full day or half day. And then there's the darker color that you see there, and those are special education classrooms, like substantially separate for kids that need, more services during the day. From left to right, it is the lowest level. At the back of the site, because there's a significant grade difference between Adams Street and the back of the site. But at the back of the site, that is on grade. It is handicap accessible to that floor from the back of the site. And so those pre-K classrooms right there can have access then to, like, if we were creating playgrounds to, by the really big and nice tree there, and other things. But so we put the youngest children at the lowest level. He mentioned that there was not a cafeteria or a gymnasium, but we still need food service. We need a way to be able to feed kids that are there all day. And so the gray box over there in this image, we were actually saying we're gonna put a very small, and it is undersized, but a very small warming kitchen. Like they would have to bring food over from somewhere else. It would be packaged on carts and either kept cool or kept warm, and then it would be distributed. And then just again, that stair that I mentioned, and then resource. On the next level up, you have the turquoise. The lighter turquoise is general kindergarten. The darker turquoise is special education. And by the way, though, in special education, there's a mixture of like half classrooms, small group rooms or resource rooms, and then the actual classroom. So the bigger spaces that you see there. The other thing that is in that category is OTPT. So on this floor, the darker turquoise that you see right there on the left of that middle floor is actually OTPT. That too is undersized. Sean mentioned that there were 725 square foot classrooms along like the general corridor. There's a line of 3, and then the yellows are always like stairs, and then there's the ones on the end. Instead of being able to fit 3, we can only fit 2. In MSBA guidelines, a pre-K and K classrooms are approximately between 1,100 square feet to 1,300 square feet, including a toilet. And the only way we were able to approach those square footages was to only have 2 classrooms along that corridor before you get to the break in circulation on each floor. So that's why we're only able to get the 11 classrooms on this option and not to the requested 18. But this allows you to see how, the building could work. There's a little bit of admin, not a lot. There's anything that's pink in the diagram are specials, like a little bit of library, but not a lot. Another space that could be a combined either art and music or something like that on the upper floor is what you see there, but it wasn't meeting all of the program requirements that Ms. Butler and Superintendent Phelan gave to us and that we discussed in the visioning exercise for this. I don't know if there's any questions about that one before we move on, but or I can run through all of them. So this is the next option, fine. This is the next option, and again, you always see that little yellow stair on the, that egress issue is addressed in all 3 of the options the same, but then you see a much bigger mass that is towards the front. The reason why it's where it is on the site is there is actually one really amazing tree to the east of that existing building. But additionally, so we pulled it forward to avoid that tree, but additionally, we wanted the new section of the building to be the new front entrance for the educational center. We wanted to make sure that it was handicap accessible and there was no confusion when you approached the new building as to where you were going. So there's a new canopy, there's a new entrance, and there's then a knuckle between the two that connects to the existing circulation pathways of the C building connecting to a new building. So again, from going at the top is the first floor that is at grade at the back, whereas the second floor is actually at grade at the front. But you have pre-K at the back building in building C, and then a little bit of pre-K in the purple in building B on that lower floor. And then in this option, which meets the total of 7 plus 18 for 25. You also then in a new addition have some kindergarten classrooms that face a new outdoor play area towards the back, and you can see that green circle with the red dot is that big tree that we were saving. At this floor, because remember at the front, you're now underground, but you do have access to daylight where that outdoor play is. There's currently sort of like a courtyard between the mansion and the building C. And that is actually at the lower level when you exit from the linkway. And so what we were doing is also then allowing for there to be a new connection as well in that knuckle, that yellow knuckle circulation, anything that's yellow is circulation. But also at this floor level, then you have brand new receiving. One of the existing condition, I'll say challenges, is there is no loading or receiving in the existing building. Because there's no dining, there's no like trash really other than like, you know, paper goods and things like that and soda bottles or whatever, you know, the students would be throwing away, and then just, you know, consumables in the classroom. But it's not the same as when you have a kitchen where you have, you know, produced quite a bit of trash. So in the new addition, at that lower level on the left-hand side, you have receiving as well as custodial. And then you have in this option, you're able to have room for a kitchen. And then what you'll see on each floor is what's called dining and collaboration. These are little, you know, little kids with little legs. We wanted to limit how much going up and down stairs. So we did it a distributed dining option where even though there's a central kitchen, it would still be taken to the floors. So the students for at least dining would not have to go up and down. Then when you get to the middle floor, which is now your new front entrance, here you have admin, you have again, remember pink is special. So like in this case, there's a gymnasium for physical education. It's not a gymnasium in the way that a normal elementary school you would think of it. It's actually what we would call a gross motor room. It's only about, you know, gross motor rooms are usually between 3,000 and 4,000 square feet, where an elementary gymnasium is like 6,000 square feet. And so again, for this size population, and I mean that both in terms of numbers as well as just the size of the students, you don't need something quite so big. Music is next to that. Again, that reason why we call it a multi-purpose is you could do like performances and gatherings, you know, and things like that if the curriculum wanted to do that. OTPT right across as well, so it has a connection to that gross motor room as well. They may want to spill into that area. And then again, we have kindergarten on this floor, kindergarten in building C, and then art as anchoring the other side, that's the specials. So what it means is that students to get to the specials never have to go up or down more than one story. So pre-kindergarten could come up, the kids that are now on the third floor, because over on the last floor plan that you see there is the upper floor of the existing building. This is only a 2-story addition. You see that there's kindergarten up there, and then for that floor, we also tucked the dining into that the building B at the bottom corner because since we didn't have a floor, we couldn't put it in the new area. So this one was exactly to the program that was requested. We did do then one more option. This option was trying to understand, well, what is there going to be if we have growth? i.e., what happens if we want to go to, instead of having like 4 classrooms right now of half-day pre-K, we wanted everybody to be able to access full-day pre-K. So you would need an additional 4 classrooms of pre-K to even maintain the same numbers. But then also if we allowed for some growth in the kindergarten as well, what would that look like? And so in this option, it's very similar in first floor and second floor. The main difference is that then in the third floor, we actually have then an addition as well. And again, from the street, it would only look like, you know, just a 2.5-story building. From the back is where you would see the 3-story, but it allows you to have that growth. One of the things that we did in the design of this, though, is we tried to make it very universal. Like a K classroom could be pre-K, a pre-K classroom could be K. They always have the toilets grouped in between them so that every classroom has access. Honestly, they share, like 2 classrooms share 2 toilets, so there's a little bit of, more optimization in that utilization of those 2 toilets. And what that allows you is, like, if you decided suddenly we wanted to have way more pre-K, you could. Like, it's just, okay, well, now instead of it taking up just what you see on the first floor, it could take up more than that. And just having that universal flexibility is what allows you to do that.
So, go ahead.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but we met for several hours back in July. I think it was July 3rd or July 2nd.
Yes.
And I am amazed and grateful for the insight and the creativity that you have provided in this set of drawings. And in seeing it the way it's presented at the select board and now here tonight is really exciting for our younger students. And I really appreciate the flexibility of options, the flexibility of space, being mindful that we're working with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, so distributing space in a way and being thoughtful about how many floors the students have to go up and down. So thank you. I mean, you listened to the feedback, you provided great responses to the things that we were concerned about and thinking about and hoping for. And I just wanna say, in this amount of time with that kind of a meeting, it's it's amazing to see this kind of options and creativity. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
Essentially, this last slide that we had here, I know no one's gonna be able to read this text, but essentially on the left was the program space that we talked about that looked at what the prescribed number of rooms were. So as you can see, option 1 is the left column, we got some red X's there, meaning we weren't meeting that program. So, you know, we're assuming we're not gonna consider that one. Option 2, which was the base program that met everything, we have all green checks there. And then option 3, which is that 3-level addition, what you see in orange are those additional spaces that we talked about at the pre-K at the top and the K at the bottom. So with that, you know, we'll open it up. I'm sure there's a bunch of questions and I'll stop sharing.
I'll just jump in here at the start before other members do, but I just wanna thank y'all again. This is the amount of analysis and detailed drawings and the beautiful massing structures and thought, as John said, that you were able to do in a very short amount of time. And that we were able to get kind of 3 different ideas around this pre-K option, I think is beyond actually what I was kind of expecting we'd be able to get just within the time and the kind of the budget constraints and all those things. And so I think this is phenomenal work. I really appreciate it. From my perspective, I think our question here was, can we fit a program on this site? And to me, the takeaway here is, yes, we can fit a pre-K program on the site. The pre-K program we have, we can create one that actually has a little bit of room for growth, which is exciting. I think we were also, the committee, you know, we had talked about some flexibility around, we weren't 100% sure the pre-KK was absolutely the answer, but that's what we wanted to look at because we had to narrow it down. But it also seems very clear to me that a middle school is not going to fit on the site, right? The 660, right? You need a larger gym, you need the auditorium, like those things are not fitting here based upon your analysis. And even an elementary school of, you know, kind of 500 kids, which are the 2 MSBA models too, is likely not going to fit because again, there's other needs that we're not even able to fit in here, which is a full cafeteria, which I think a full elementary school would need, and a full gymnasium. So it does seem like my big takeaways here is from your analysis that I was hoping to get and feel like I have is that La Brea site is a really good site, but it is a good site kind of for this type of model that again you and the team ultimately talked through, and seems less likely that it's gonna be an effective solution for kind of the other MSBA models that we have moved forward with. That's at least my takeaway I want to share. But other members' thoughts?
This is great. You guys are truly visionaries and I appreciate all the different options and especially working during the summer, trying to pull this all together in such a short amount of time. It's incredible, and also just appreciate just, you know, construction costs and project costs, just estimates to kind of give us an idea, a better picture of the cost. Just to clarify, this does not include the building, the purchasing cost, right? Okay. This is great, and I've worked with you before on the Cunningham
Good to see you
Collie
again.
Cott 3rd and 4th floor project, and visionary there as well. I cannot
appreciate
believe
it.
you turned that space into what it is, and it's so great to see the kids use it last year and excited to start this year as well, so thank you.
I had a couple of questions and it's been great. It's actually, I don't think I've met you in person yet, so good to see you in person. Thank you for all of this, ditto everything that everyone said. I had two somewhat specific questions. So you said the gym or multi-purpose room is like roughly 3,000 square feet, so half the size.
3,500, yeah.
3,500, so
Yeah.
a little bit more than half the size of a standard gym. I assume this is the place where like there would be you know, and I don't know what actually happens in early childhood programs, but that this would be if there was going to be a school-wide convening, it would happen in here. Can you just talk about the degree to which, like, how many students can this hold? Can it also hold families? I'm kind of wondering if this space is like,
Can we do some quick math?
I'm just thinking about the, you know, end of year concert, the kindergarten graduation,
Right.
all that kind of thing. So that was one, and it looks like you're going to do something
I'm
there.
gonna do some math.
Okay.
Quick. I'll let you know.
We haven't calculated the occupancy of it.
Yeah,
But what I will say is that one of the reasons why we put in that floor level, the dining / collaboration, is you could totally put a movable wall there and let it spill out and expand
Mhm.
into that area right there.
Yeah.
And gain another, those dining areas are about 1,400 square feet. That, I know they look like they're not that big, but because they're long and skinny across there, they're actually somewhere in the 1,200 to 1,400 square feet. So you could get to like almost like 4,500 to 40, we'll call it 4,800 square feet for a gathering like that. And it is about 15 square feet per person. The reason why I'm asking you to do math is I'm not that good to be able to on the spot do that calculation. And that would be, you know, people sitting in like rows of chairs and things like that, and then having a little bit of space at the front for whatever it is you're doing, like a podium or a small platform that, you know, can be a stage or whatever. I think that one of the things that's interesting about this site though is at the back there, the area around that tree, and the way that could be shaped and created, you know, you can, like right now it's pretty flat, you go out there and it's pretty flat, but that area could be transformed into both play as well as an area that people could gather. And so yes, it would be dependent on rain, but there is an opportunity to have like a really wonderful graduation for
Yeah.
these students out there as well.
You can put a tent over anything, so.
And you can put a tent over anything, you've got it. So I do think that there's opportunity there beyond just this space. The other thing is we didn't program those spaces, like we didn't sit with anybody for hours and talk about all those different uses. If that was truly important, we can go forward further. The other thing is that you've got a lot of parking on the site. The other thing that we didn't do is we didn't actually sit around and say, okay, they only need 130 parking spaces because that's how many staff, and I'm just making up numbers, don't quote me on this, but like we didn't do that kind of analysis on the parking and transportation level. The footprint can't really, like you can't go higher unless there's negotiations with the town as far as like going higher than the 2.5 stories, which Dover Amendment, maybe you could add a 4th floor, but you could definitely go forward. You're not near the setback towards Adams Street. And it's then becomes an architectural challenge. Like, how do you relate to the rest of the site and the neighbors and the mansion and all of that? But there's totally room there to do a bigger footprint than what we did.
Mhm.
We just went to the size that we thought was appropriate. So if you wanted to have more than 4,800 square feet or whatever it is, you certainly could get to the number that you wanted to. And honestly, because of the nature of where we put it and we didn't build over it, we allowed it to be a double height space, and honestly, you could just, so it could feel almost, you know, very close to being like a gym.
Yeah.
You know, so did you got some?
Okay, so what I did is I assumed 3,500 square feet as a starting base point, and I assumed a 5-foot egress path all the way around, so I deducted that square footage out. So depending on how you lay out the room, you could have anywhere between 160 and 250 people. And that is including deducting an extra 10 feet, the full length for a stage or a platform, assuming not many people are gonna sit. So you do have a bit of a range depending on the layout between whether or not you're gonna have chairs and tables or single seats. So that's about the range that you're gonna get, assuming that you're gonna have all those extra aisles for
And state
security.
again, that was for the 3,500?
3,500 was the base.
Right.
And then I deducted,
Okay.
and then deducted, and then your range, depending on the layout, could be between 160 and 250 people.
And that's without then a folding wall and actually expanding into the, you know, the additional 1,400, square feet. In the court, not in the quarter, but in that open dining and collaboration area.
Great, thank you for doing that, appreciate it.
I think the key thing it highlights is like this is a 10-15% conceptual design that we have right now. There's a lot of work that's gonna come after this that, you know, that type of input is kind of what we're gonna be looking for if this project moves forward.
Also really appreciate even the way you did the additions, very thoughtfully trying to integrate it and creating that entrance into and connecting it, you know, and very appreciative of incorporating that tree into the design as well.
It's
So
amazing. It is really
yes,
amazing.
it's beautiful, and I've toured the space, and it's great when you're in some of those rooms, it's like you feel like you're in the middle of the forest, which is incredible. So so yeah, very thoughtfully done.
Thank you. Another specific question? You said you had two.
I don't remember.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that's okay, it probably didn't matter.
Any other general questions for folks? The goal here is kind of an update. This update has been provided out to the school building committee. It was also done to the select board. Did you do it to the warrant committee too? Yeah, the warrant committee is also asking that I come to their meeting on Monday to talk about La Brea. Again, at this point, it is hands are in the select board. As Sean said, the select board has made an offer. I'm not sure what the offer is, obviously, but they made an offer to La Brea, so. I'm not even sure what the timeline is on when La Brea will make a decision exactly. I think it's obviously up to them. They can wait as long as they want to. So, yeah. So
Can I just leave you with one other like little tidbit that as you're looking at the plans that we provided you, while it probably has less impact on what you could fit in the existing, as far as the addition, a pre-K classroom is about 1.25 times a general education classroom for other grades. So if you wanted to do a quick like, how many could we fit across there? What would that be to just see about your what is it, 497 or 400, whatever your number is for your K5. It might be just an interesting, you could very quickly take a look at it and see, because like I said, the footprint could enlarge, and you will gain more regular classrooms. Because of the existing structure, that's going to be a tougher to gain significantly more, because you still are, the 725 is below the 825 to 950, which is the size of a classroom that MSBA shoots for. But I wouldn't discount it completely for a pre-K through 5 if that was what the district decided that they needed most and was in that location was the best option. Might be able to.
all right. Well, I'm not seeing other hands.
I always wanna end with saying thank you to Sean O'Rourke in the
course.
school building committee, who not only have been driving the MSBA project and have that well in hand moving forward, pausing and working the La Brea site in parallel to the other work that's going on with the school building committee work related to MSBA. It's just a huge task to take on, and I wanna thank Sean very much for
Thank you.
the time and effort on behalf of the town and the school, so thank you very much, and your whole team, thank you.
Yeah, he glossed over it, but the MSBA project is moving forward. Sean's helped get us an OPM at this point over the summer. We got an architect walkthrough yesterday and got a road site, so have an architect soon, so we're rocking and rolling. Appreciate all the work on that. So I'm excited. That project's still moving forward, given La Brea is still a little bit up in the air and out of our hands at this point. But as we hear back, we will report back to the committee. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you so much, thank you very much, Sean, thank you.
Great, so that is the school building committee reports. We will jump back slightly to the chair's report. I don't have too much other than to, again, just thank John, Carla, the whole team, and the preparations. Kids will be in our buildings here in a week, so that's very exciting. I'll remind members of the community to please make sure you're paying attention to the school calendar, because it is a little bit different this year. We are starting back next Wednesday. We will be in school next Friday. We won't be off, so you're gonna have 3 days, and then we'll be off on the 4th. So it's a little bit weird with the late Labor Day. So please pay attention to that. But thrilled to have kids in the building, and yeah, cannot wait to get all of that going. As John said, we had some more kind of start of the year things that we typically do, but we pushed them because we knew we were gonna have a library discussion with superintendent search we're gonna do in a second. We have the residency stuff, so I had to push some of that just to make sure this, we weren't here till 10 o'clock and it's already 8:50. So trying to be mindful of members' time and make sure these are manageable meetings, but a lot to share there and that'll be very exciting. We will jump then now to item number 7, which is the Superintendent Search Committee, the most exciting thing on our agenda tonight. So I will turn it over to Lizzie.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to obviously thank Stevie and Nathan for their time over the summer working on this project in order to bring this update. I'll share some brief sort of overview of where we are, having received and reviewed 3 proposals in response to the scope of work we voted at our meeting in the spring. So we did receive strong proposals from 3 reputable organizations, the Collins Center at UMass Boston, Zeal Education Group, and Hazard Young Atea Associates, or HYA. And the subcommittee identified strengths in each of these proposals. And we did, after discussing them, they were all different. But we did feel that, any of these 3 firms could be a strong partner for us in our superintendent search process. As we reviewed the proposals, we considered both the overall cost of each proposal as well as looking at a breakdown of the hourly cost for the scope of work as each organization presented that to us. And of course, we thought about it in the context of the scope of work in our conversations last spring and determining as a full school committee that we wanted to move forward with partnering with a search firm for this process. So really quickly, I'll just kind of overview the 3 proposals that we received and share the subcommittee's recommendation, and then see what my fellow subcommittee members may need to add to what I've shared, and then see what questions we may use to discuss going forward. So the Collins Center has as we read the proposals, some of the things that surfaced for us, the Collins Center clearly has a really strong track record of municipal searches in Massachusetts, including superintendent searches. And as a center within UMass Boston, their model is a bit different. And accordingly, their proposal was the lowest cost for the process, as proposed, of about 120 to 150 hours worth of work, whereas the other 2 firms' proposals were for at least 250 hours. So it was really a little bit of a different approach to the process from the Collins Center. That proposal was for $24,000 for the 120 to 150 hours of support for a search. We received a proposal from Zeal Education Group, which is a firm based in Connecticut. They submitted a very thorough proposal that did address all aspects of our scope of work. And we also noted that, one of the things we had requested was information about previous searches that the firm has led. And as a newer firm, we did note that this one did not yet have as large a volume of previous searches. Their proposal came in at $32,875. That was for 263 hours of a scope of work. And then the third proposal we received from HYA. HYA is a national firm like Zeal. It's based in Illinois, but their model is that they operate with local consultants. And so our proposal was written and submitted by the local consultant who would be our partner for the search. He's based here on the South Shore in Massachusetts. And this proposal, we felt, demonstrated that they could deliver on our full scope of work. They notably also brought the highest volume, most experience in leading searches like this, both across the country as well as in Massachusetts specifically. So, you know, in our discussions last spring, as a full school committee, we spoke about the decision to explore partnering with search firm was sort of motivated through acknowledging our context of these past several years of high turnover in the superintendent role, of having, you know, now an interim superintendent, having had a previous interim superintendents. We all understand the challenges this has created for us as a district, whether we're talking about residency policy or any number of other issues. And so that was well established for us as a committee. The knowledge that, you know, the high stakes of any superintendent search for any district, we're feeling especially that much higher for us heading into this search. And it was in that context that we chose to explore a partner in a search firm. I think the subcommittee's conversation was around wanting to rely on a partner with like a really super established track record of success. That felt like the right way forward for us as we were considering these different strong proposals. And that HYA and having a dedicated consultant based locally who would be available to us along with their sort of high volume of experience in running these searches over many years, but up until the present day. That was what we spoke about as sort of our recommendation to move forward with HYA, even though they had come in, sorry, I should have mentioned it, $36,100 for their proposal. So, you know, that was roughly about $3,000 more than Zeal Education Group. And that was, again, for 250 hours scope of work. I should note there would potentially be incremental additional costs with this proposal on the way they structure it. For example, based on how many languages we might choose to translate the community survey into, their sort of base proposal includes for English and Spanish. A community can choose to translate into however many languages you want. If you choose to use their translation service for that, it's $550 per language. So that is one thing that we did pay attention to. We had made sure to confirm, and thank you, John, for confirming this along with Finance Director James Mallory, that this amount for, you know, any of these three proposals, it does exist within our budget for this year. We had discussed that with Katie Blake going back to last spring, and she knew and you knew that this would be a priority for the committee, and it had therefore been built into the FY26 budget. So just to be super clear, you know, the budget does exist for us to move forward with one of these proposals. The subcommittee's recommendation is to move forward with HYA. And Stevie or Nathan, is there anything you'd like to add? And thank you again for all your time and reviewing and discussing these. Okay.
But any questions from?
Any questions from Val, Anna, Mark?
No, I think this is great. Thank you so much for all the work that you guys put in over the last couple of months, trying to pull this together for us. I appreciate your recommendation on this particular search firm. I think that's helpful having, especially from, you know, the hours that they're willing to dedicate, because I know this is with the turnover we've had, I think it's really helpful to kind of have as much help to make sure that we make a good lasting decision. I think that's the most important. I think we've just been kind of in limbo. I feel like even comments from tonight, like I just feel like this not having that steady leadership, you know, over the years, I think is just like really kind of things have fallen through the cracks, and I think just having that so I really appreciate the recommendation, and this looks really good to me. Thank you.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. I think the most important thing is we need a successful search to have a long-term superintendent. And so the delta of $3,000 between, you know how important the budget is and how tight resources are within the district. I don't see any way in which that's not a good spend of money if we think that gives us even a slight chance of getting a better candidate, a better process, a more inclusive process for a community, any of that. So appreciate the recommendation. I'm very comfortable with that.
I just would like to reiterate, you know, my own personal gratitude, but I know we talked about this at the subcommittee too. Just appreciating the work that went into the submission of these proposals from all three. You know, and just recognizing the strengths that they each bring, and, you know, also having confidence in what seems like the right fit for us at this point in time, with all the pieces that we have to consider. So.
Yeah, it seems like HYA fits the scope we were looking for best.
Yeah.
Which is, Okay. Well, I will make a motion on behalf to proceed with entering into a contract with HYA for a superintendent search firm.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? Otherwise, this will be a roll call vote. Once again, we'll start online. Go Bow.
Yes.
Stevie,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Nathan,
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
I'm emphatic yes, very exciting. So this means that what can community members, you'll tell Dr. HYA, we'll then get some information on kind of the start process, and we can communicate with the community that we are moving forward with the firm. We don't have them under contract yet, but it's great. So we'll send that in kind of a future update.
I think we'll have an update on this.
When we'll kind of start the process, or what we're looking roughly around.
I mean, that's what we will now sort of determine with them. I think there will be a step relatively soon of inviting them to come and join the school committee at a meeting in September to have a conversation with us about how to best launch the process, assuming that we can, you know, get them under contract as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And I think in their timeline presented in the scope of work, they had outlined the goal of beginning interviews and focus group meetings and other community engagement efforts in October. And so that would begin in earnest along a parallel path with, you know, through that feedback, finalizing the job posting and things like that. So I think safe to say we'll have updates on this process at each of our meetings, basically between now and when we hopefully appoint somebody in January. Obviously to begin July 1 of 2027. Important to clarify that for anybody listening who's not maybe heard our conversations up to this point. That's what we're working towards, and yeah, so I'll follow up with them and work with you. I'll follow up with you, Mark, to facilitate the process of the contract, and we'll go forward from there. So
And
thank
is
you.
that typically like October to January, is that a good enough timeline according to them?
Mm-hmm, yep. They felt like that was very reasonable, and they are gonna be spending a lot of time here with us. And so I think we'll all be getting familiar with their team and there'll be many opportunities in the community for folks to participate in the process. So looking forward to that, as well as stakeholders in the district, administrators, educators, staff. So yeah, should be good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lizzie. Moving on to item number 8, Budget Coordination Committee. There was a meeting last night.
There was.
Would you like to provide an update on that?
Sure, not really. It was a sort of reorientation to the work. So we have some new committee members. And we basically went, if you all recall, last year, the major work product of this committee was a master schedule for budget development over the course of the year. And there is a version of that in the finance committee folder, if you ever wanna look at it. I have a new version that I'll update when I get to it. So we basically just reoriented ourselves to that schedule, which has us finalizing the budget in January. And if you recall, John and I were taking the trip down memory lane earlier today. We were sort of just realizing what the budget might look like in January. So we are really looking to move everything earlier by about 2 months so that we're all collectively prepared, both this board, warrant committee, select board, to build and then test the budget. So that's what we focused on.
Great. Lots more to come with the budget, but any questions from that update? Not, there's one action item we actually have on this is you may remember that part of this committee, the school committee has one kind of public member that we appoint. Last year we appointed Rob Milt, reached out to Rob, and he was gracious enough to say that he was willing to stay on for another year, and so it'd be my recommendation that, given this committee's kind of quite new, and again, Rob is willing to stay on, kind of utilizing his expertise for at least bother him for another year, and then we can recess next year if he's still willing to raise his hand. But since he is, I recommend the appointment, and so similar to other committees, I can make a motion to approve the appointment of Robert Milt to the Budget Coordination Committee.
Second.
Are there any questions? If not, then we will do one more roll call vote. Not one more, because we have minutes to approve, but Bao,
Yes.
Stevie,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Nathan,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So thank you, Rob. I'm sure he's watching this waiting with bated breath. Volunteers time.
Mark, do you want me to run through the warrants here, or did you not?
No, there is a number of warrants that members will see kind of within the motions documents. Going back to June, really appreciate Nathan signing those, reviewing those over the summer as former finance chair. I remember that, and so there are a lot of different amounts. I think in general, Nathan has been forwarding these over, and he might have another one. Typically, as y'all know, we read them out at these meetings, but to save Nathan, given there's like about a dozen at this point, given the many months, I won't make him read all those numbers for his sake and for time's sake. So just note that they are in that folder.
And I will forward to the team, to the committee. There's like 4 that I need to forward around to you, so I'll do that.
And obviously, if anybody has any questions about those at any point, talk to Nathan, talk to John. Thank you.
Yep.
Next is the approval of minutes. So we have in the folder a couple minutes were dropped in there. There you go. We have a copy of the minutes from June 3rd and from our June 25th meeting. Anybody see any issues with those minutes, edits that they wanted to recommend? If nobody saw any edits, then I will also take a motion.
We can do them both at the same time.
I believe so.
Alright, I'll make a motion to approve the school committee meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2026 and June 25th, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. One more roll call vote, except for the adjournment. I keep forgetting about motions. Alright, Val,
Yes.
Stevie,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Nathan,
Yeah.
Anna,
Yes.
I am a yes. Excellent. So next meeting agenda, as we mentioned, we'll have an update on the start of school. We'll have some new staff members being introduced, some information on new hires stuff. We want to share some information on community schools and kind of the wait list information that we reported on last year. And again, the committee's worked on over a couple of years, the transportation and kind of bus wait list, which was an issue last year, and we'll report on. So a lot of those kind of start of year things. I think we'll have a few more committee meetings, but do we know specifically if policy is gonna be able to
Policy's
meet?
gonna meet on the, hopefully, the 27th. Awesome, thank you, Stevie. And then that'll be it. I have not, we'll have to coordinate the other committees, like,
Facility advisory, maybe we can get update on the Cunningham fourth
they'll
floor.
probably be in September, so yes, for a future meeting, for sure. We might
But
not
even
be-
if we could get a.
I can,
just on
I
the
can
fourth
get,
floor,
I can get,
that'll be
yes,
okay.
absolutely, I
That'll be
can,
nice
I can
fun.
do that, but we probably won't be able to meet before then.
Stevie, did you have another item?
I just had a question. Will the agenda for next meeting include updates on, you said on like new faculty members and stuff, will it include updates on positions that we're currently hiring for the director of DEI, the director of nursing, that sort of thing?
Yeah, you wanna give a?
I will
quick
gladly give a quick update on that. We had a great committee put together by Dr. Chris Lyons, our new HR director. We had over almost 30 applicants for the DEIB position. A team of 4 from Milton, 2 parents from Mark in CDM, Bill Fish and Dr. Lyons interviewed candidates after a paper screening. 3 finalists emerged. Carla and I and Chris met the 3 finalists, and we will be offering the role to somebody tomorrow at 2:00 in the afternoon. So we hope to report out on who they are and their background, and we'll welcome them and announce that when we get to our next meeting on the 1st of September. The director of nursing, we have not been as fortunate. We posted that role 3 times. We have offered the job to 2 folks. They have not taken it for a variety of reasons. And I am personally meeting with all 7 nurses in the district tomorrow to go over what we're gonna consider to be a plan B to get the year started as we continue that search during the school year. But we're gonna pause, take stock of what we need to make sure can happen, get feedback from the nurses on how we wanna proceed with that, cause they're the folks that will be impacted by any shifts that we have. And it could involve bringing someone back part-time to do some of the leadership work and empowering some of our existing nurses in higher roles while we kind of do this bridge plan until we can find the new director. So those are the 2 central office level positions that we have active right now in search committee.
We should also have an update on the Bias Hate Working Group is meeting before September 2nd, so.
Correct.
An update on that
Yeah.
as well, to name for community members. So if there are other things that members think of between now and the 2nd, please let us know. Reminder also to members, we have our governance meeting next week, and to update the community, we had a governance meeting early in the summer where we started talking about our goals and priorities for the year. So our meeting to kind of work to finalize that, to align that, and then bring that to a regular meeting to share out and adopt those. So we will have that, and I'm sure Charlotte will send an email about the reminder for next week. So that is the next meeting. Anything else? If not, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we are remote hybrid, so roll call vote. Val,
Yes.
Stevie,
Yes.
Lizzie,
Yes.
Nathan.
Yep.
Anna,
Yes.
and I'm a yes for last time. Thank you all very much. Stevie, especially thanks to you. I don't even know what time it is for you, but it's too early, so thank you.
No problem.